This is Tim.
Mulele.
And this is Critiquing Comics. Welcome to Critiquing Comics. This is Tim with Mulele in Tokyo. How are you doing?
I'm good. And you?
I'm doing pretty good. So we've got two comics today. And by coincidence, they have some similarities, I guess you could say. Let's start with After the Fall. The writer-creator is Jacqueline Goldfinger, art by Keni Thomas, letters by Taylor Esposito. It takes place in the year 2040 in Austin, Texas. There's some kind of plague going on, or there had been, or maybe I think it's still going on. It was a little unclear, but much of the comic is silent. There are portions with dialogue, although the dialogue kind of struck me. It sounded like beat poetry to me. It was really stylized dialogue, and it wasn't. Nobody would actually talk that way in a lot of the places.
Yeah, it did kind of have that feeling like they had just discovered William S. Burroughs or something like that. That's not exactly the problem that I had, though. The dialogue itself was a little bit, but for the most part, it was understandable. I should say I'm going to be a little bit heavy on critique of the artwork here, but the art stylistically is not bad. There are a couple of things that I have to say about comic presentation.
Let's see if you had the same points that I had. But
yeah, if you're the artist, I will say, as we say in Japanese, prepare your heart. This comic is drawn without any sort of white panel, white gutters.
Yeah.
Between the panels, and the colors are done with without any kind of overlay to kind of tie things together or to push the eye in a certain direction. Red is red, flesh is flesh, brown is brown. They're all just flat. That's the color that it is, so that's the color that it is. And what I mean by that is if you look at a movie, and this applies to comics too. I just use movies because it's I guess easier to see it because it's a photograph. You look at a scene in a film. Let's take, for example, Terminator, because it's the most obvious. Terminator 2, Judgment Day. There's a blue tint on everything in that film. Why blue? I don't know. Maybe just James Cameron likes water. Maybe blue works for him aesthetically. But what it does is it kind of pushes everything into the same kind of color area. So even if you have something that's bright red, it'll have this blue tint to it, which will calm down the red a little bit. Otherwise, the red will stick out like a sore thumb. And so in this comic, there are lots of pages where there's red, and it's like abrasive red. One example would be on page page 12. 12. I guess it'd be page 13 because it's on the right side.
Oh, the red sound effects?
The red sound effects, especially on top of the projector, really bothers my eye.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a bit of green in the gray, but it has this really bad effect on my vision. And maybe it's because I'm a 50-year-old.
Yeah, it vibrates.
Yeah, maybe because I'm a 50-year-old man. But this kind of thing wouldn't happen if there was like a blue tint over the entire thing, saying that there's a blue light in the room or that the atmosphere is blue or whatever it is fine. But the coloring in this way, you can start to tie things together and use different colors to bring out a directional flow in the artwork. because the rule of color is warm colors seem to pop forward, but cool colors push to the back. You might see a lot of blue backgrounds with kind of warmer toned people, and that kind of works to separate everything. But in this, that rule isn't applied, so everything is kind of all over the place, fighting for attention. And then you've got these red sound effects on top of that, plus the fact that there are no panel borders, or rather, there are no gutters, which means there's no place for the eye to rest and no place for the eye to easily discern the difference between a panel, especially when the line of the art, the basic line of art, is thicker than the line of the panel border.
Right, yeah, it gets confusing which lines are panel borders and which are part of the art. It's like a straight edge in the art. There were really some places I had to, it's work. It's work to kind of read it and figure out what's what.
Yeah, and there are artists who get away with this, but what they're doing is they're arranging the content of each panel in such a way as to lead the eye to where the eye should go next. And doing that will make this work. But this artist is not doing that. There are a lot of things that are dead center, dead center, dead center down the page. I'm talking about page 6. And the eye just goes, it doesn't know where to go. I guess it goes to the bright colors. So maybe the fireball that hits in the middle of the street in the middle of the page. But what happens above that and below that isn't clear. It also goes directly to the face when the woman on the motorcycle takes off her visor. Mm-hmm. So just in that sense, the artwork is fighting the reader here. Sorry, was that anywhere near what you were going to say?
Certainly the panel gutter issue, the lack thereof. Also, I was noticing a storytelling problem where it's hard to kind of, they're not making good connections of events between panels. So like on page 4, there's a man and woman, a couple who are naked in panel 2.
Yeah.
We get close-ups of their faces, and then a couple of panels looking out the flap of their tent, and then we see 2 people who are maybe the same people, but now they've got clothes on. And like, when did they get dressed? I wanted like some panel that suggested they were starting to get dressed, picking up a piece of clothing or something. Yeah. And you couldn't see their faces well enough in the second panel, and I wasn't even quite sure that they were the same people.
Yeah.
Or that fireball on page 6. I can't figure out what the fireball is. What's happening in that panel? Is that the Vulture guy coming in on his motorcycle, or his motorcycle's on fire if that's the case? I really don't know what's happening in that panel.
Yeah. Also, to that point, the sharpshooter has the word sharpshooter kind of in red text above her face. The doctor has the doctor above his face. The vultures have their title above another person. It's actually in the wrong panel. Mm-hmm. And so this person riding up on the motorcycle is not the vulture.
Right.
So there are certain things that are just not being adhered to. And if you're going to go out of your way to say the sharpshooter, the doctor, the vultures, give them something to do more than just show up and die or show up and leave. Because a lot of the characters, even the librarian gets a title card. And it's like, why?
Yeah, what's the significance of some of these characters?
Yeah, so the doctor, I understand, we kind of reference him later, but this is not a good introduction, and that was not a good callback because the introduction didn't work. And so, yeah, there is raw talent in the art, and the story, once it settles down, will begin to make sense, I think. But this was a hard start.
Yeah, I was really not sure what was happening.
Yeah. Even now, looking at it the third time, um, I'm just beginning to, okay, well, maybe, okay,
Oh, maybe this is what's happening there.
yeah. There are interesting ideas, and all of the people seem kind of individual, like the
Hmm.
projectionist um, being mute or maybe deaf. I'm not sure. Holding up the cards.
Hmm.
That was interesting. But who is this character, and why should I care? Is kind of these are two questions that are not answered
Hmm.
by this comic. And if she's going to be a necessary part of the plot later, then introduce her later. Because right now you've got 15 characters that you've introduced, but only one of them really matters at this point.
Right. Right. The woman's riding around on the motorcycle and
Yeah,
delivering stuff and whatever, and we're following her. But yeah.
yeah. Even with the bright red cross on her jacket, it's not clear what she's doing until they actually get to someone trying to make a deal with her about her job.
Hmm.
That should have been the first, the first part of the comic. That would have been the most clear. That if
Yeah.
that
The opening
scene,
scene. Hmm.
yeah, if that scene in the bar um, was first, then we know what her mission is. Then we know what her job is. We know what the stakes are. Or by the time that her friend gets killed, we then know what the stakes are. And that would have been a very, very solid beginning. Um, and then, as she kind of goes through her mission, you can start going through all this other stuff. And it shouldn't be that she's hanging out in the movie theater. It should be that she needs something from the movie theater.
Hmm.
That the projectionist is maybe a contact in that book that she receives from that guy. It says these are all the what did he call them? He says it's a guide to the snitches, the traitors, the people who help me get things. Once she has that book, and that book is key to this story, then she can go to the projectionist. She can go to the librarian. She can go to all these different people because they're all snitches. They're all uh, traitors, and they will help her get what she needs. So these scenes from the bar onward should have been at the front of the book, and all the
Hmm.
rest of this could be repurposed later in the story.
Yes. Yes. That would have been better.
But anyway, sorry. More?
I didn't really have much else to say about this. I did kind of like what the figures, the characters, the style of them was kind of nice. I liked that, but the rest of the art, I couldn't really figure out what was happening in a lot of
Yeah,
cases.
I think that's squarely on the coloring, because even though some of this is a little bit difficult to read in that the lines are very thick and chunky, and sometimes there's not a lot of detail you can pull out. I think the color really kills a lot of the direction of the comic because everything is just flat.
Hmm. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, it really, along with the lack of gutters, it really makes it hard to know where to look.
Yeah, yeah. So just to sum up, composition and color as a help to the composition. The letterer understands composition and is working with that to lead the eyes um, most of the time. Um, those music cues are killing me though. I really don't. I really don't care to have to read the lyrics of the Macarena. Um,
No.
yeah, and the guy references it as his daughter's favorite song later. So why do we have to have this playing in the candy shop which is I guess a very on the nose version of a pharmacy.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, there are good ideas. There are interesting interesting nods here and there. But yeah, the story so far is a very messy beginning, and I would say even though the illustrator also did the color, all of the art was done by one person, right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, this style of coloring may work for some individual pictures, but when it comes to comics, it's not doing enough of the heavy lifting, especially if you're going to have a lot of dead center composition in each panel, because then the eye doesn't know where to go.
Coming November 12th on To the Batpoles podcast, a long-lost Batman film revealed, the first known Batman 66 fan film, made on 16mm film in the spring of 1966 by a group of high school seniors. Paul and I will talk to collector Mitchell Kaba, who discovered it, and to John Powers, one of the students involved in making the film. The film itself will be revealed on YouTube simultaneously with the release of this episode on November 12, 2020. Find us at tothebatpoles.libsyn.com or in any podcast app. A new piece of Batman history will be revealed on To the Batpoles. So our second comic is by Pier Dola. Pier, Pier Dola. I'm not sure where this person is from. He or she said, "Can't wait to see if you can tell me how shit my stuff is. Love the podcast."
Wait a minute. Is he or she? I'm just going to say he as a default. I'm sorry. I'm old like that. But is he suggesting that his comic is bad, and so he sent it in to be shit on?
Well, he also said that he just listened to an episode where I can't remember which comic it was. It's been months ago, but he says, "I just heard how you destroyed the fake Masters of the Universe comic." Lennox was the name of the artist. I kind of remember a comic that was kind of based on Masters of the Universe. So maybe he's thinking, since we tore that one a new one, we'll tear his a new one also.
That one we recorded in a park in Kichijoji.
Oh yeah,
like a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I do remember that. And to be honest, and if you've heard the episode, maybe you'll catch it, or if you listen to it again, you'll catch it. But halfway through the recording of that, I suddenly realized what the gag was, and it's like, oh, wait a minute. And I might have kind of pulled back a little bit, but just a PSA. But you all know that this is just my opinion, right? So some asshole on the internet says he doesn't like your comic. It doesn't really. You shouldn't take that to heart. Just take the stuff that you think is useful. The rest can stay on the floor. But yeah, please go ahead, Tim. What did you think?
Right. So this comic apparently is called Organic But Not Mental, which I found out is also the title of an album from the year 2000 by a French synth rock group called Mortham Vlade Art, who I listened to some of their stuff on YouTube. They're kind of like Depeche Mode with a little bit harder edge. Okay. Has nothing to do with this comic other than the title. Maybe Pierre is a fan of Mortham Vlade Art. Anyway, so this comic is completely silent, or it's, as much as I read of it, the 360 pages. I read about 40, I think. I mean, the art is accomplished. But I can't even give you a summary of what the story is about. It's, I don't know, I think taking some drugs would help me to understand it. Like the first scene, there's some kind of big wolf creature being brought into a room, and there's a kind of slimy being hanging from the ceiling, and then they plug something into the wolf's face and into this other maybe kind of robot-ish person's face. And apparently they are giving energy to this slimy being, and a bunch of people get killed, and and that's just kind of the first scene. I don't know. What I'm lost. I'm just, I mean, it's drawn well, but I don't understand what's happening really, or it's just kind of so out there that I can, I can kind of figure out the general outlines of this narrative, but it's so kind of wild, and it's hard for me to get a foothold in it to follow the story.
This kind of seemed, and I could be way off here because there's a lot of stuff that I clearly just cannot understand. The first couple of stories seem to be separate stories to me. I wasn't sure what was going on or why, but it seemed to have a change in, after a little bit, it seemed to have a change in scene, a change in theme. We go from science experiment to food hall. The illustration is accomplished enough that it reminds me of 1970s heavy metal magazine. Also a little bit in some of the content, how bizarre some of the content is. And I could really see this artist finding a spot there with a story that was a little bit more coherent. But it seems that this artist is going for a lot of horror themes and a lot of gross out stuff. And just a lot of stuff that just kind of grates. And at a certain point, as a reader, I'm like, okay, this is just kind of nasty. I don't think I want to play in this world anymore. So after about 100 pages, I was out. But the artwork is quite good. I guess accomplished is the correct word, because the techniques are there. The visual sense is also there. The ability to move from scene to scene, from panel to panel, is also there, but without any verbiage. I don't know what the fuck's going on. There's no clear anchor, because you've set you've set everything in an alternate universe or alternate reality that is so different from our own. There's nothing for me to latch onto.
Yeah, it just all feels kind of random. Like, here's the scene, and now here's the scene. Yeah,
it does. But also there are some bits where it seems to have a little bit of a sense of humor. Especially the cartoony bodies and the extremely realistic faces on them. That's actually quite interesting. But overall, not understanding what the comic is, also being met with a lot of either gory kind of body horror stuff, or just like a slasher pick aesthetic. Yeah, so like, okay, no, I'm going to go read something else. I don't need to see this. So, I mean, that's it. If you like ugly people, deformed people, and when I mean ugly, I don't mean like, not pleasing to the eye. I mean like he goes through some lengths to make people look ugly.
Mm.
But if you're down for that, and you're down for some of the gross out stuff, then yeah, this comic is quite a feast. But if you're not down for that, this one's hard, and for me, it's hard.
Yes, for me also.
Yeah, and to the person who sent it in, I guess the creator of the book, I'm sorry I couldn't shit on your book more, but your art is too good for that. So take that as you will.
I kind of feel like part of the problem here might be that I don't know, maybe there is an audience for this, but I felt like this was mainly the creator is doing it for himself. This is what the kind of stuff that he wants to do. But I'm thinking maybe it could benefit a little more from him thinking about what readers will be interested in or be able to follow.
Well, I mean, it is one of those things. The artist will do as the artist pleases until the artist can't anymore. And this artist clearly was able to do 360 pages worth. So lots and lots of energy.
Yeah.
Like lots of energy in this artwork.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe his point was not for the reader. If you consider someone like H.R. Giger and how disturbing some of his shit is, if he were to only aim for the fans, then he would not be drawing like that. But he made some quite amazing stuff, and other people were able to utilize those things to great effect, like the alien monster. Although I did hear that by the end of his life, H.R. Giger did not like that monster anymore. He was tired of seeing it. Yeah. So, I don't know. I wouldn't say change anything, except if you want people to really get on your art, maybe consider a shorter piece, which is a little more coherent and maybe even a little clever.
Do you think that it would maybe be better if there was at least a little bit of narration, or something to kind of explain it to us? Because it's hard to follow as it is.
Yeah, it could benefit from that if he wants to do that. It could definitely benefit from that. But, some artwork is better served without explanation. If we were to actually understand why this was happening, if you were to spell it out, it might be the worst. It might be worse than what it is.
Well, yeah. Yeah, I can see how that would be true too.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah. I'm just scrolling through the other pages that I didn't see, and it doesn't settle down.
No.
It gets more refined, and it gets crazier, and actually starts to remind me a lot of David Lynch. If David Lynch were not censored by things like reality, this is I could see him going this way. I don't know. The later stuff does seem a little bit more coherent as I see recurring characters. Not coherent. Sorry, that's the wrong word. I would say characters do kind of come back. The guy with the rather large forehead comes around a couple of times.
Lots of people getting shot.
Yeah, maybe it's a thing.
People, creatures, beings. I'm not sure people's the right word, but anyway, characters are getting shot and killed, and blood and brains splattering around, and people flying around in things that are sort of look like bats, giant bats that have
Yeah.
been modified into spaceships.
Yeah. The guy must have gotten tired of shooting things because he suddenly goes to kung fu. And those kung fu pages are actually quite beautiful, except for the arm break. But I mean, like stuff like that. That's definitely heavy metal worthy, and I think he could go far in something like that kind of venue. But I mean, the rigors of an editor may call out some of this stuff and say no.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of like it, but I don't want to see it again.
Yeah, that I can identify with that opinion.
Yeah, I think my first reaction to this was my eyes. Second reaction was my brain. But yeah, it's kind of like Eraserhead. Did you see that?
No.
Yeah, Eraserhead is really, really disturbing. But people kept referencing it in popular culture because it was one of those like just on the edge of popular culture, but so warped and disturbing. If you were into art film, then you'd watch that and like, oh, that's great. If you weren't, then you're like, okay, I never want to see it again. I was kind of in between. It was in the 80s. I was a kid. I watched Eraserhead, and I'm like, wow, that was disturbing. I'm not sure what to make of this. And then every time someone references it, I'd be like, Eraserhead. Yeah. That woman in the radiator was something crazy. Yeah. Anyway, that's all I got for this one. Yeah.
If you'd like us to critique your comics, send a PDF or a link to mail@deconstructingcomics.com. We'll read at least 30 pages of it and critique it on the show. So till next time, this is Tim.
I'm Mulele.
And thanks for listening to Critiquing Comics. Support this and all our shows at patreon.com/deconcomics. Coming on Wednesday, Patrick and I cover Fullmetal Alchemist Chapter 3 on the law of equivalent exchange. See you then.